Shields and swords, feel the wars, fighting my blood down to the core. Warriors from medieval age, fear the reign of night brigades. Crusades into the room, moving through the temples and tombs. You scared and place, prepare to face. Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. 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 Professor Awesome and the minions of doom.
The story of Yvain, or Night of the Lion, has all sorts of just really cool adventures in it. Obviously, there's a lion. There's magical rains and fights with knights and demons and all sorts of things like this. Magical rings. So all those things are super important, and I don't want to elide them and say they're not important. But I want to look at this as a tale of two sidekicks. Okay. Now, what is the function that a sidekick has in this story? Well, sidekicks can have different functions. So, for example, a sidekick sometimes is just a person for the protagonist. I'll say hero in this, but the protagonist to tell their innermost thoughts. So, take, for example, a Disney cartoon. Very often, the hero or heroine has an animal sidekick, usually a talking animal sidekick. And that sidekick doesn't really help a great deal. Their job is to hear the inner thoughts of the protagonist, so the audience can hear them, right? Other times, the role of the protagonist or of the sidekick is to help the protagonist through contrast with them, help us see how they are. So, for example, in a superhero might have a sidekick who has essentially the same powers that the hero has, maybe just a little, maybe just a little bit more limited, but they don't have the full heroism, right? So if you are the human flame of some, your sidekick might be Lil Sparky, right? And the idea is to show that even the powers are not quite enough, right? There is something else that makes the hero extra heroic, or perhaps super heroic in this case. I think here in Yvain or Night of the Lion, we have sidekicks that actually show the failings of the protagonists that they are connected to. So Yvain's sidekick is obviously the lion, right? The lion is the sidekick. And the problem that we have for Yvain is he takes on his knightly responsibilities. He even wins. This is interesting. He kind of wins his wife through combat. So even in that chivalric battlefield way, that Gawain, not surprisingly, is the one who encourages him in that and discourages him from going home. Even that's how he gets his wife, right? Not through wooing her in the ways that a lot of our other characters in Chretien and other Arthurian romance have done. So he gets his wife, and then he goes off and just continues with the chivalric side. He ignores the courtly side. He ignores his responsibilities at court, his responsibilities to his wife, right? And so in that way, we see the lion is, in essence, a kind of representation of this, right? It is simply the chivalric side. It is simply the warrior side, with all the good things that come with knightly chivalry, but it's wild, right? It isn't really a full person. Now, Lunette then acts as the representative of Laudine. And where Laudine is, I think, rightly justified in saying, you didn't come home after a year, I think that's justified for her to be upset. She, in a sense, does not really accept or understand, her husband's chivalric duties, even while those are the same duties that ended with her marrying him, right? In the first place. And so she won't forgive him. And so as we see Lunette throughout the story, we see that she is in many ways helping him in the way that Laudine should. Very often I'll have a student say, he should have married Lunette, not Laudine, which makes a lot of sense. But obviously their social class makes that impossible. But all that being said, in a sense, what Lunette represents is what's missing in Laudine, right? She represents the missing part of Laudine, the part that really wants to not just accept, but be a part of her husband's chivalric exploits. And ultimately, in the way that Lunette is rescued and benefits from them, just as Laudine was before, Lunette also is going to be part of that. And so what happens in the end then, interestingly enough, is really, although the plot seems to be about all these adventures, it's really Yvain is a husband who's screwed up, and he needs to reconcile to his wife, and his wife doesn't want to forgive him. And so what we see in the end is what happens with the two sidekicks. Lunette finally says, all right, I'm going to help you get back with Laudine. And Laudine needs a lot of persuading, but Laudine ultimately accepts her husband back. And importantly, the lion returns. And the lion returning with him, with Yvain, I think tells us two things. One thing is that Yvain understands, truly now, that the lion must be domesticated. The lion must also come back to court. The lion must also be able to come into the home and the domestic space. But Laudine's acceptance of this, which is urged by Lunette, right, who makes everything whole, Laudine's acceptance of this is an acceptance of, in essence, Yvain's lionness into the home as well. And for them to have a fulfilled marriage, and really for Yvain to be a complete and fulfilled knight, what he has to be able to do is to fulfill both his chivalric responsibilities out in the battlefield and his courtly responsibilities at home. And this means domesticating the lion and bringing it into the home where it's accepted. This is something that Laudine really understands here. And finally, in the end, they do as well.